We are joined by Bill Koplos. He is senior producer at Big Ten Network. We are going to highlight his career because so often we talk about those who are in front of the camera, the athletes, but this is a really important piece to the machine with the Big Ten Network and what we have here in our guest in Bill Koplos. I'm Bryan Fenley. I'm an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Bill, you have two Emmys, so I want to make sure that I don't forget about that. But you are also adding someone to your family pretty soon.
Correct.
How soon until you get to add the moniker Dad to the front of your name?
So sometime in September, hopefully. So whatever that is, about 3.5 months. So right at the great time for us at Big Ten Network, right at the start of football season. So it'll definitely be another added layer, but looking forward to it. So.
Well, it'll be a chance for you to once again relive your childhood through your kid. And I read a story about you in that when you were young, you got Andre Dawson's autograph. It,
Right.
so what was that experience like as far as being a kid and taking in some of your most memorable sports fanatic moments?
I mean, it was pretty cool. Let's see, he got the MVP for the Cubs in 87. So I would have been about 8 then. I bet you it was probably in like 88, 89, somewhere in that range. If he was still on the team in 89, somewhere in that range. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Just go to the mall, wait in a long line, and got the autograph. And the best part, two good parts. One was when I got up there, all nervous, my mom said something to the effect of, "Billy, tell him about how you mimic his batting stance." And I said, "Oh, I don't really. I actually like Von Hayes' stance, the first baseman for the Phillies back at the time, who had a really outstretched, really wide stance." So that was a real foot in my mouth there, I'm sure. And then number two was, for some reason, they picked my picture to be the one in the local paper the next day. So somewhere in my boxes, I have a picture of Andre signing the baseball for it. And then lastly, my wife and I were at a Cubs game. Must have been 2 years ago. And I don't remember if he was still connecting with the Marlins at that time or not, or if he was just there as a fan or something with the Cubs. And we were walking in the concourse, and Andre came walking the other way. And I just said, I generally don't, run up to people or anything like that. But I just said to my wife something like, "Oh, there's Andre Dawson right there." And he must have heard it because he went like, made a face like you heard it. So, but I mean, it was obviously really cool back in the day to meet, when you're 7 or 8 and you're going to Wrigley Field, 2-3 times a month, and then to see the guy in person get an autograph, obviously really memorable.
That picture is somewhere. Where are your two Emmys? Is one behind you?
One is behind me there,
Okay.
and I actually that was for a Sports Center in maybe 2003 or 2004 for a best daily program. So that was pretty memorable. It was really cool. I actually got to go to the ceremony too, which not everyone could do. But I think the reason I went was I was working on a show on Sports Center. And on that show I think, which was a big part of our resume reel, was an interview with Joe Horn back in the day.
Oh, wow.
And I don't remember the particulars of the interview, other than Joe Horn was a great interview back in the day. And I think that was a big part of our resume reel. So when we got the nomination, they invited a handful of production assistants, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. And then the other one was for our Stanley Cup coverage of the Blackhawks in 2013 when I was at Comcast Sportsnet. And we won, I believe it was for our coverage of the parade that day, which we had already had one run through in 2010 when they won that cup. And then in 13, we blew tons of coverage. We had helicopters. We were on they had buses that they had, open air buses that we were traveling with the players on the buses, some of our reporters and producers and stuff like that. And I was one of the producers back in the studio. So that was cool. I actually don't have that one. That one I got after I just left Comcast Sportsnet and to go to Big Ten Network. And there is a process where you actually have to go to the website and request the Emmy and pay a fee. And I haven't done that for that one because I already had that one, and so I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I guess I still could if I wanted to. So don't have the second one in the flesh and at this point.
I have a feeling that, you might have two right now, at least as far as the awards, but I think 3, 4, 5 are coming pretty soon. We're joined by Bill Koplos with the Big Ten Network. I'm Bryan Fenley. Of course, Bill, you work with what's going on in the studio, but you also do a lot of remote production as well. You were talking about your prior stint when you were with Chicago NBC Sports and being part of that parade there with the Blackhawks. What is the most, from a logistical standpoint, the most complex remote production you have ever put on or been a part of in organizing?
Well, I would say one of two things. It was either like something like that, the Cup parade, which we did. However, with that, it was just, I don't want to say fly by the seat of your pants, but you only had a couple days to get ready for it, just because we didn't know if they were going to win it or not. But obviously, we had some plans in place. And then the other one, I worked on a show called Big Ten Tailgate, that we've been doing now since 2016, I believe. And it's kind of evolved a little bit as we've gone along from the amount of people we've had on the road and in production. And now it's kind of a joint production where we do have talent and crew on the road, and we also have them in the studio. But I worked on it primarily in the 2017 season. And so I don't know that there was one particular show, but each week picking up, kind of like Game Day does and going to all the campuses. I think we traveled at least 9 of the 13 weeks or whatever it was, or 9 or 10 of the 13 or 14 weeks. And, at the beginning of the season, I remember we're doing a show in Purdue and it's 95 degrees. And then by the end of the season, you might be in Columbus and it's 15 degrees. So it was always a kind of an interesting, I'm sorry about the sirens. I don't know if you hear it. Big city. Big city life there. But yeah, Tailgate is a very involved show and very complex to put together, and just so much logistical stuff too, that just goes away from just even the TV production side. We have a great logistical and business side of things, marketing, and it's people who watch on TV just kind of probably don't realize the amount of effort and work and time and all that goes into each and every show when you produce a show like that.
What part of your job is the one or the avenue that gets the endorphins going the most?
I'd say still like the live shows, when you're, especially after a great game. And, we get those pretty often with what we do with, all football season. We have a ton of games. And then obviously basketball season, the Big Ten has really been elite the last few basketball seasons. So we get a lot of opportunity for that. So, and a lot of times as you get everyone's watching the game, things can change so much. You might think you have everything ready to go, and then somebody finishes the game on a 9-0 run in the last 40 seconds, and you're totally scrapping your original plan. So, but to me, it's still the live environment, the control room environment, or if you are doing something on the road, a remote environment. We were, I was at the Madison Square Garden for the New York Big Ten tournament, and that was just so fun to be a part of. And it, when you're going to the Big Ten Network, when I went there in 2013, I wouldn't imagine 5 years later I'd be already have gone to DC and New York for Big Ten tournaments. So that was really cool too. But just I'd say any live environment after a great event, or during a great event for that matter, is definitely the part that still kind of makes you feel passionate about it the most.
You said when you took the opportunity at the Big Ten Network that you didn't visualize or envision what you'd be able to do so quickly. What do you think the company saw in you that gave them the confidence in you to do all of these things and to really grow your footprint?
Hopefully they're just a hard worker, knowledgeable about both sports and the TV business, dedicated. I don't know if any of your other guests have said this, but to me, one of the things the producer has to do the most is make the on-air talent look as good as possible. And obviously they can do a lot of that on their own, but there are times like the ones I'm just referencing where, we're feeding them stuff last minute. They're getting stats or plays or information, or sometimes stuff from other games where they're not able to keep an eye on the end of the Wisconsin-Nebraska game because we have the Ohio State Rutgers game on our network. So they didn't see, the last second touchdown over there, or they're on the air during that and you have to relay that to them. So I don't know, hopefully just a combo of all those things. The experience I had both from college on up through ESPN and 9 years at the NBC Sports here in Chicago. It was Comcast Sportsnet when I started, but now it's NBC Sports. And I like to think that I'm a good, hopefully you can, if you did a pie chart, I have a lot of the good qualities that, that they would value in an employee. And hopefully that's obviously what happened.
We're talking with Bill Koplos, senior producer at Big Ten Network. I'm Bryan Fenley, a national anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So you were saying that your job, in part, is to make the on-air talent look good. How can they, on a reverse side, make you look good as a producer? What do they have to do, or what do you like from them to do in order for them to say, hey, you're covering our you-know-whats, we're gonna cover yours as well?
I mean, to be prepared to know what, if it's a good relationship where if one of the two is prepared and the other isn't, you're going to do more work. But if both are, it's a symbiotic relationship. So you're both in a better spot. Be prepared, know your stuff, be flexible, because things are going to change. And, just, I don't know, it's just a relationship, I would say, that you develop. It's not going to happen right off the bat. So like I know in several cases where your relationship that you might have with a talent in day one, week one, heck, the 8 months in is different than you have 3 years in. So a lot of the ones I've worked with throughout the years, especially even at Big Ten Network, like maybe you don't have as much exposure. Maybe you're not doing the same amount of reps early on as you are now. So like, for example, our main football guys that we've had on for years, Dave Refson, Howard Griffith, and Jerry DiNardo, I got some exposure to them early on, but I was also newer and maybe didn't do as much content in year one as I did down the road in year 3 and year 4. So the relationship both at work and even away from work has evolved a lot throughout the years. And you like to think that obviously it improves, but it also, you just get so used to what they ask for, what they expect. And, little things, something as little as, Dave tees up Jerry on a comment, and Jerry might make a 20-second comment, and I have probably 15 seconds to tell Dave something that changed, and to do it in the most short, quick, succinct. He doesn't want to hear me say, oh, hey, and by the way, like, you got to get your words out quickly, calmly, and clearly. And I think that just working with them more and more, kind of what they expect. And maybe what Dave expects might be different than what some of our other guys, maybe Rick Pizzo or Mike Call or whoever else we may have on. It might be a little bit different, but for the most part, it's fairly similar. It's just knowing what to say and when, and that's part of the hallmark of a good relationship there too.
Specifically, when was one time that you recall when you had to act under the pressure of live television and communicate something that ended up working out well, but while it was a little hectic behind the scenes, the viewer wouldn't have really noticed because of the way you guys were able to pull something off? Maybe a
Right.
game ended late, maybe there was something that went long, an interview, whatnot, but where you acted like you were so ready for this opportunity that came when a lot of people would not know how to handle a situation like that.
Boy, that's a tough one. Well, one that I can think of that's still fresh in my mind was last year. The Big Ten basketball tournament was, if you remember, with COVID starting to kind of grip the nation, for lack of a better term. We did Wednesday games. We did our first 2 games on a Wednesday night basketball. It's the 11-14 and the 12-13 game. And they played those in Indianapolis. They had fans. And I believe sometime that night, they said the next day there will not be fans in the stands, but the tournament will go on. So that happened Wednesday night. I was producing the pregame show on Thursday. And, that Thursday, as you remember, was just absolutely crazy from start to, but by the start of the day, we thought we had all these tournaments. By the end of the day, every league and tournament was more or less shut down. So as it related to us, I think we were on the air at 10:30 Central Time, with the first game supposed to start at 11. And, without getting into all the details, basically, we had, executive producers and stuff come in and saying, hey, we're hearing things they're changing on the fly. this may not happen. Just be prepared. That probably was at like 10:33, 10:35. And within 10 minutes of that, everything was called off for the tournament. And we were getting pictures from Indianapolis of Rutgers and Michigan, maybe. I can't remember exactly who was playing, but we had pictures of them. You could see them on the field, on the floor, being told, they were shooting, warming up, and then you could see them going like, kind of shrug their shoulders, and next thing you know, they were walking off. But as it relates to the question, it was just total chaos in the control room, and hearing we may get called off, to knowing we were going to get called off, to knowing when we could say it, when the press release might go out. And but I think everything went out crossing the air, and then we were live for probably a good hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, of not even, there were no games to cover at that point. The story changed to, a human interest and health story, and just what it meant for the league. And we did, I think, like I said, I think we did close to 2 hours live, and then we came on later in the afternoon and did an update. We had Andy Katz get an interview with Commissioner Warren on site, along with some players and some coaches, I believe. But it was just a wild scene, and one that I think we handled well, and the viewer at home wouldn't have known, how chaotic it was on the inside.
What were you thinking as soon as it became official that the Big Ten tournament was not going to go on? Because you had heard the rumors, like you said, but eventually they dropped the hammer and said, we can't continue. What crossed your mind as that chaotic event took place in real time?
Just disappointed, probably more than anything. Just also just not knowing what, it was just, it went from that to, by the end of the day, we had, 75 people in our studio being told that we're going into a work from home environment, and we don't know when we'll be back in here. And the craziest part is that a lot of those people still haven't been back in. So a lot of our, a lot of the staff that aren't in studio or remote production have been working from home. So there's coworkers of mine that still haven't been in the studio, and we're on 15 months now or whatever it is. So also the fact that you were told a day or two later that you're not supposed to be in a group of 75 people shoulder to shoulder, and that's what we were doing. So I remember John Beeline was with our coverage that week, and he had just gotten in like his first day or two of shows. He was looking forward to doing the whole weekend. And when we said goodbye, I remember him giving me like an elbow or something, and him saying, "Hey, I'm 65. I can't get too close to anyone." And, with the virus concerns and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it was just, as I'm sure and many people can relate to, just a really odd and weird time, I guess you could say. And it was obviously for a better part of a year, and probably still is to a lot of people.
Yeah, I remember the night the NBA decided to shut down, when the whole thing with Rudy Gobert became
Yes.
official, and working on the news desk, and seeing this Oklahoma City Thunder game being delayed. And I feel like I was watching a scary movie, and then to learn later on that it would become, shut down. But when you transition from that experience that you had with the Big Ten basketball tournament in 2020, and then you move into the summer of last year, and you're juggling the whole thing within the network. Are we having a season for football? Are we not? What was that like as far as planning for programming, but at the same time, not sure how many games you're going to play, who's going to play, and when they're going to play?
That was also just a really interesting time, because, as you said, there was just so much uncertainty, so much unknown. After the initial shock and whatnot, the craziness in March, into April, starting around May, you're starting to hear, oh, what's going to happen here, right? So we're still a few months out, but all these programs and networks deal several months out, obviously. So there was just a lot of uncertainty all the way around. I think, I wasn't in the meetings with the conference where a lot of this was being discussed, but I was getting it relayed to me, and there was just so many different moving balls in the air, so much uncertainty. And, I'm sure different people obviously believe different things as it came out. Different schools were a little more vocal about what should be, if we should be playing, if we shouldn't. The start dates were debated, right? At one, some schools started in September. The Big Ten had the deal where we announced the schedule, and then it came back and it got changed and it got pushed back and we didn't end up starting till October. So, that was a lot of that was dealt with our programming department and executive team. And the programming department specifically has had one year that they'll never have again, hopefully, just because there's just been so many changes, even from once the football schedule was slated. Now, the league did do a great job of getting it on, I think with only 5 cancellations or something like that. It was a really low number or postponements. And if you look at really all the sports, basketball did a pretty good job. But I mean, this is something that was so hard to fight against, and there was just so much unknown. And when you're having, some of these sports, 20, 30, in football, way more than that, athletes coexist. I mean, it's really hard to avoid the virus. And so I think for the whole, the league did a really good job, as did most of the leagues. And the fact that there was still a playoff, there was still a national champion, and then what was pulled off in the spring in the state of Indiana was, I think a lot of people will remember that for a long time, on how great the tournament was. And, and now obviously just seeing fans at some of these pro events is really cool. So hopefully we're past that, but it was certainly a challenging time for everyone involved.
How did you feel like during that time? And yeah, like you said, we are certainly heading into better times. I was watching the Knicks game yesterday as we taped this on a Monday, May 24th, and listening to the rumbling of the crowd was just, it provided those goosebumps, because you could really feel the energy and what was missed for so long. But how did you feel like your view on the business and the role you had was pushed to the max the most, or you were challenged in a way that you had never been challenged before, something in which you hadn't been trained to deal with when you entered the business initially?
I mean, that's, I would just say just the ability to be flexible, and which you have to be, obviously, in a lot of lines of work, including ours. But not only that, but just not even knowing, we're used to like having a pretty good idea of what everything's going to be, right? We know pretty soon we'll know what week 1 football looks like, or week 2, or the basketball schedule will come out several months in advance. Like here, these schedules were almost more like an outline, really, than, you know what I mean? Like we hope this will happen, but we're not sure. So I think that was part of it. And then I think just, if you get even broader, all the civil, you look at the social justice events that happened and that so many athletes were moved by and a part of, and I know a lot of us were moved by. So that became a huge part of our programming last summer, and we did a lot of compelling interviews and intriguing interviews with a lot of these athletes who, the social justice events and everything that happened last year really rose to the forefront. And that's, I thought, was one of the more important developments of the year. And another one that, in February, I don't think most people would have expected. And just one that you're just reacting to as it happens. There was just so much stuff going. It just, as everyone kind of, you'd be on Twitter and you'd say, man, the month of June felt like a whole year, or the month, some of these months with all the events that happened when you went from the virus to the social justice events. And then, sports wasn't even really happening there for a while, right? I mean, like, we didn't even really have hardly anything for a while. So all this stuff even came more to the forefront, and a lot of our athletes' voices were heard. And I just thought it was really an important time to be a part of, and the ability just to react and give the proper news events their time. And I think we did a good job of that as a network. And I know other networks and companies did as well.
Bill Koplos is a guest with us, senior producer at Big Ten Network. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. I would think, Bill, it would be really hard to pick out one piece of programming from your career, especially what you've done and overseen with the Big Ten Network. But if there was one episode of one piece of content or programming you are most proud of, what would that entail? What would that look like? What would that be?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know if there's one. To me, I just kind of remember, like, almost like a season or a group of, like I mentioned the New York thing, and to me that sticks out. The tournament in 2018, where maybe it's not one show, but to me that week really stood out to me because um, we had a staff there. Your staff in a remote event like that isn't as big as what it would be if you're all in the studio. And we had a remote staff working out of a truck at MSG. And that whole week, I think we started with a preview show on Tuesday, and we went Tuesday through Sunday. And just the amount of games and the amount of stuff we covered. We were on the air between our studio team and the remote team. We were on the air for, I think you're talking 13 or 14 hours straight on both Thursday and Friday. And then in addition, on Wednesday night, we had another 5 hours or so. And then we still did stuff Saturday, Sunday from the arena. So that week really stood out to me as a group, just because I thought we knocked it out of the park, and had a great tournament. The league put on a great show. And just being, I don't know, it just felt cool, as I've been living in Chicago most of my life. And it just felt cool to walk to work in New York for 6 days, walk through Times Square down to 34th Street and go to MSG. So that was really cool. We go on a bus tour every year in August, or at least we have. We'll see how this year goes with everything. But again, not one particular show, but just having that chance to travel on the road with coworkers and getting to see all the campuses it's just kind of a really cool and memorable time of the year. Not only just at the start of the football season starting and to see the teams and the new players and the stars, but also just to have that time. And there's something we said about driving in a bus, going to Happy Valley in August, or going to the lakes in Madison, at that time of year, and going to dinner in Iowa City or whatever it might be. So again, that's maybe not exactly what you're looking for as far as like something but the shows that come out of that, I always feel like we do justice of, we always talk to the coaches, the coordinators, the key players, and our guys always do a great job of kind of contextualizing the key battles, the position battles, what they expect to see. And, usually the production staff's on the road about half the time, but our talent and our researcher, Harold Shelton, are on for 3 weeks straight. So that, I know for them, is always an interesting time of year, but just stuff like that kind of sticks out to me. Some of the work we've done specifically, the tailgate show is something that I've been really proud of, as is many of our coworkers, and a lot of our original programming stuff that we've done. The Journey, is an award-winning show that Bill Friedman and his group have put on for years. And I know it's always, highly respected and well thought of. So, and then of course, a lot of our games that we put on, that I'm not as directly a part of as much, but that crew, we've had some crazy games when you go all the way back to the Appalachian State Michigan game.
Oh yeah.
The first week in the network to, just to some of the basketball games and everything in between. That team does a great job as well. So I know maybe I didn't center on one specific answer there, but there's kind of so much just sticks out when you look back, and that's just in my 8-9 years here. So it's you're opening Pandora's box a little bit there, but.
Well, when you've produced so much high quality television, it would be impossible to narrow it down
Right.
to one thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you talk about these shows, with those shows come interviews. And I've got an interesting question for you here. If you were interviewed when you were a swimmer at Missouri, what is the one question you would have liked to have been asked?
Wow. That's a great question too. I don't know.
Not to put you on the spot.
I think just looking back, I think maybe something related to training, because I think a lot of us are guilty. I see on Twitter every day, and you're at a game and, hey, Rizzo, you're a bum. You struck out with the bases loaded. I don't think people grasp how much training and preparation. I mean, I think they know in the back of their head, of course, these are elite athletes, but I think that a lot of people think, especially for the highest level athletes, and myself included, I'm guilty of this, thinking, well, they haven't had God-given talent, but the amount of preparation that goes into it for these men and women, I think, is just insane. I mean, I know from my perspective, swimming was a pretty thankless sport, just because you're not, unless you're Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte, Caleb Dressel, whoever, you name the many stars of the men and women's teams, you're not getting any recognition, but the amount of work that goes into that for people who aren't getting any recognition for a lot of these, non-revenue sports is just insane. And so, for example, swimming, I mean, we might swim, maybe 2 hours in the morning before class, go to class, and then you might swim another 3 at night. And it wasn't just like this 2 or 3 days a week. It was like this every day. You work in weights, you work in dryland activity, running. And, other than being in great shape, a lot of the athletes, not everyone's winning, conference titles or medals. I mean, so few have even sniffed the Olympics. So I don't know. I just think that the training and the preparation that goes into it, and now that's even gone so far with video. I mean, you heard last year with Major League Baseball, a lot of these guys said they struggled because video was taken away because of the COVID restrictions last year. So they weren't able to go in the clubhouse during the game and say, hey, what did I do on my first at bat? How can I adjust? They weren't able to do that last year. Now they're able to do that again. So it's stuff like that, which when I swam, we're going back 20 years now. I mean, there was some stuff like that, but just the analytics and everything that's gone into sports has changed so much. So I know that's a long way to get around to say, but I think there's something, I just think that the preparation and what goes into it, even now, I mean, like you guys see, I mean, how much is done of, like, name a sport, like how much do we talk about the preparation that goes into college basketball or college football or the NFL? We know that they're out there training, but so much is restricted as to what you can cover for the practices. I mean, if you've ever been to an event or an NFL team, I mean, it's like Fort Knox there, right? I mean, like they're letting the media come out for 5 minutes at the end of practice where Justin Fields is stretching or throwing one ball up and spinning the ball up in the air to himself. I mean, you're not seeing the actual preparation, but you know that it happens. So I think I would have been like to ask like what it's like to be an athlete, a student athlete at the time, and what all goes into it. And maybe I could have elaborated and said, it's not easy. And I think that people kind of gloss over that fact a lot.
I think you're spot on there. I also think that if you were asked a cliche question, you would have rolled your eyes because you would have said to yourself, come on, you
right,
could do better than that.
And
Go for it.
That's a good point. No, I mean, you're asking everything but the cliche questions, but there are so many of them out there still. So
exactly. There are.
Yeah.
Final question for you. Bill Koplos is with us, senior producer at Big Ten Network. All right. This one might catch you off guard in a good way, Bill. I did some research and I wanted to ask you how your dog Spike changed your viewpoint and your love of life and what that dog did for you in bettering you as a human being during his time on this earth.
It's funny you mention that because when we had an ongoing inside joke kind of with some of the guys I mentioned before with Dave, Jerry, and Howard. And they would always ask, especially at the beginning here, you get on the bus and you may not have seen him for a couple months. And how's Spike and what's he doing and this and that. So, and then I'll get to your question in a minute, but then last year, so basically we lost Spike last February. So February of 2020, right before the pandemic started. And Dave, unfortunately, didn't realize that and asked me about it like 2 weeks later, and other people were in the room and like, what are you talking? He just lost him. And Dave felt really, really bad about it. But I don't know. He was just, I mean, an incredible dog that I had my entire 30s. And I got him in November of 2005. And so I had him for 15 years or close to it. And my wife, who we started dating in like the 2015 to 16 range, and he made an indelible mark on her as well.
Aww.
I mean, was just so in love with him. But I don't know. I think he just taught me to live every day and enjoy it because he never let anything bother him. He dealt with a lot of health ailments, especially later in life. And of course, you're not sitting there having a deep conversation with him, but there's something about, to me, for dogs, I think they're the best. And there's something about just having them at your side, and they're so loyal and loving. And they'll defend you and they'll stick up for you. And when you have a bad day, they're going to be wagging their tail and happy. And, just, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think he just taught me. Also, I calmed down. I think a lot over the years, it's as you get older and learn, I wasn't maybe in my late 20s, even with work stuff, like you let it bother you, you take it home with you a little more. And I think as I've grown older, it's a lot easier to do that, to just get home and not take it home with you. And I think that he helped a great part of that. And I'm sure kids will as well, but I haven't had them yet. So I got this tattoo you can see here.
Oh,
So I don't know how it's, but I got
yeah.
that last September. We were going to get it right around March, right? We lost it in February. And then I had an appointment like that Monday after everything got canceled.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're still open if you still want to come in. And I'm like, I'm good. The pandemic's clearly starting to take over here. So the tattoo got pushed back like 5 or 6 months, but he was a great dog, and obviously always remember him. So he taught me a lot.
To just quickly follow up on what you just said, how in all aspects, how did he help you get through things? Tough thing.
I think just being who he was. I think just knowing that he would always be there for you.
Yeah.
No matter what. So, and again, maybe it's because he can't complain out loud, but I mean, it just seemed like he would never let the slightest thing bother him. And he always had the best outlook on everything. And he always had a good time, no matter we would take him a lot to my in-laws' place, and they're from Bloomington, Indiana. And they just are crazy about him. I mean, if his name comes up, I mean, he's treated like a king in that household as well. And just his impact he had at people. You'd be walking down the street with him, and he would just have this big grin on his face, looking at people, trying to get their attention. So, he just seeing what his impact was on others, and obviously myself. But I think I don't know. I just think that he was just a calming, pleasant influence on me, who was so reliable and always there for me. So we actually we have another younger dog now that we got last year, and Hank is his name, and we're hoping he takes after Spike. He has a great deal amount already, so he's been a great addition too. But no one will replace Spike, obviously. So, but yeah, I didn't know that's definitely a good question. Didn't anticipate we'd be talking about him.
Yeah. Well,
but that means a lot for sure.
of course, and I can empathize, because when I lost my recent corgi,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you, because I feel the spirit of the new corgi I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so that I kept the name.
Awesome.
I kept the same name. And some people were looking at me like, what are you doing? It's my way of keeping that spirit alive, because my first Izzy, it was her name, was just had such a love for life and living and supporting and just being there for you, that I couldn't say goodbye. And I just had to add that to the dog that I have now in that same name. But yeah, like you said, you've got the tattoo. I renamed the dog for me the same name. It's what we do. It's what we do. And Bill, I'm just so grateful for a couple minutes of your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm kind of, it almost brought up some emotions just thinking about, the love you have for your dogs. Sure. Because, I felt that too. But really appreciate all the work you're doing, your time, and with Big Ten Network as a senior producer, from your remote productions to your studio work and doing stuff in studio with the broadcasts as well. Thanks so much. I'm Bryan Fenley, and I hope we get a chance to meet in person next time you get out to the Rose Bowl.
You bet, Brian. Thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy watching everything that you're putting out there. So thanks so much again for having me.